Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to have you all here today to talk about the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program, Grant Opportunity. My name is Delreese Adams, and I am honored to serve as the Executive Director of the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. R3 grants are not mere funds. The grants are catalysts for change. R3 invests in communities that have long suffered from systemically racist practices, policies, and procedures. The funds flow into Illinois communities that have borne the weight of violence, excessive incarceration, and economic disinvestment. In collaboration with Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative, ICEJA has provided funding access and availability to over 400 new small, localized, grassroots organizations that without R3 may not have received state grants. Earlier this month, ICEJA released a notice of funding opportunity for R3 grants. $30 million is available to local organizations across Illinois that can provide services to meet their community's unique needs. Funding will support programs serving civil legal aid, economic development, reentry services, violence prevention, and youth development services. Today, we come together to explore the transformative power of R3, a beacon of hope for our communities. But first, we have a message for you from Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and I want to thank you for being here today to learn more about the R3 program and the grants that are available to uplift your communities. Since the beginning of our administration, we have prioritized repairing the harm caused to communities by systemic racism and disinvestment. The R3 program is a commitment to giving local organizations across Illinois grant funds to address their unique needs. Equity is the cornerstone of the R3 program, which prioritizes funding for grassroots organizations operating on budgets of less than $2 million. And this aligns with the state's goal of funding equity across Illinois and truly leveling the playing field for smaller groups and agencies that compete with larger, much more experienced organizations. This work would not be possible without the members of the R3 board, Director Adams and her team, and the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative staff in my office. I applaud their tireless commitment to building a more just and equitable Illinois. And I also want to thank all of you here today for taking the time to learn about the R3 program and how it can work for your communities.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for that inspiring message. R3 is more than an acronym, it's a promise. Restore, reinvest, renew. These three words encapsulate our commitment to healing, revitalizing, and strengthening the very fabric of our neighborhoods. Before we begin our presentations, I want to let you know that we have a special email address for any questions you may have about the information provided today or about the R3 Notice of Funding Opportunity. We will put that information in the comment section for you. Let's get started. Our first presentation will be made by Mitch Troop, our Federal and State Grants Director. He's here to provide an overview of the R3 program. Thank you so much, Mitch.
Thank you, Director. As the Director said, I'd like to provide a brief overview of the R3 program and the funding opportunity that's currently available. The Restore, Reinvest, and Renew, or R3 program, was established by the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act 2019 to allocate cannabis revenues to communities disproportionately affected by the war on drugs and systemic issues exacerbated by the policies of that era. The purpose statewide is to target communities ravaged by violence and economic disinvestment, to address those systemic disparities through local, community-based responses, to reduce gun violence and concentrated poverty in the communities, and to promote employment, infrastructure, and capacity building for communities and organizations. Ultimately, we seek to protect those communities through targeted investments and interventions. As a statewide program, our objectives are to reduce gun violence through intervention and prevention, to improve reentry and diversion services, and provide civil legal services and advice to residents, to encourage neighborhood investment and economic growth, enhance youth development, and support a variety of programs, improving the social determinants of health in those areas most impacted by that strategic disinvestment, by violence, and other negative consequences that we discussed. As the director mentioned, a total of $30 million in grant funds is now available via this R3 application opportunity and can be applied to a variety of programs statewide. The grant amounts that an applicant would be eligible to request range from $25,000 all the way to $1 million based on the geographic region and the tier of the applicant organization. My colleague Allison will discuss more about the geographic regions later. Tiers are defined by the size of an agency's budget and how long it's providing services in the community. More information on how to calculate your region and tier is available in the NOFO instructions at our website at www.r3.illinois.gov, and I strongly recommend anybody who's interested in applying to take a look. The period of performance for these grants will be 1 year from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025. There is the possibility of additional funding up to 2 more years based on the performance of the grantee and fund availability. However, I'd like to mention it's important to know that sustainability beyond that initial grant period isn't guaranteed. So we'd like all of our applicants to think seriously about the long-term viability of the program and how they'll utilize the funds to continue that viability and to build their sustainability.
This is Ari. I just started it. Sorry about that.
We do hope that we can provide multi-year awards, and multi-year awards are anticipated up to 36 months. But organizations should plan for their program continuation, even if funding is not renewed after the initial 1-year period or the full 36-month period. Now, in order to be eligible for this program, applicants must adhere to specific guidelines, which I'll briefly run through right now, to ensure that they provide effective and needed community services. First, an applicant would need to implement a program addressing at least one of the 5 R3 program priorities, which I'll lay out in a moment. Applicants need to educate community members about program services and perform outreach to ensure that program participants are aware of those services. They need to allocate sufficient staff, including local hires from the communities to be served. They need to maintain thorough service records so that they can participate in evaluations of their services and of our R3 services statewide, and to improve their services. And finally, they need to submit periodic program and financial reports to ICEJA for program monitoring. As I mentioned, the R3 program funds organizations that provide services in one or more of these 5 R3 program priorities. Those include civil legal aid, economic development, reentry, violence prevention, and youth development, as outlined in the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. Programs must address these priorities and align their programs with those and with the community needs, leveraging evidence-based practices and local knowledge to maximize the impact on the community to be served. That said, ICEJA doesn't dictate what those exact programs are. The proposed programs must address one or more of the program priorities. They can be specific to a single priority or address multiple priorities within a single program, fostering comprehensive community support. That creates a lot of design flexibility for each individual proposal, which allows for tailored approaches to address unique community needs effectively, with the recognition that not every eligible community throughout the state needs the exact same services. In that vein, R3 is really focused on community-centered approach. That program emphasizes community knowledge and experience in addressing those local needs. Applicants are encouraged to design programs that reflect community insights and preferences, rather than relying on those overly prescriptive guidelines. As such, proposed program designs need to be justified in the application based on evidence from similar programs, accepted best practices, and/or community-based knowledge. Applications must fully support and explain the proposed program, its components, and its underlying approach, so that application reviewers and ICEJA can understand the purpose of the program and ensure that it will be effective. Another aspect of eligibility for the R3 funding is the eligible service areas. My colleague Allison will talk a little bit more about this soon, but to qualify as an R3 fund for R3 grant funding, Activities must target designated R3 zones outlined on the map included in the NOFO and also at the website at www.r3.illinois.gov/eligibility. While organizations applying for funding do not necessarily need to be situated within those areas, priority consideration will be given to applications submitted by organizations located within those R3 areas, to collaborative efforts involving such organizations, or to applications where the majority of employees reside within R3 areas. Applications will be disqualified if it is determined that the services are not provided to eligible R3 zones or to residents of those zones, because it was the intention of the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act that this be a geographically targeted program. Applications, when they're submitted, will be scored on both technical program scoring criteria and equity scoring criteria, as listed here. Some of the technical criteria are discussing the need in your community for the program, laying out the design and implementation of the program, the staffing of the program, and the applicant's experience and how they've contributed to the community in the past. It's also going to take a look at the budget to ensure that the budget is complete, that it makes sense, and that it underscores and supports that program to be proposed. On the equity side, the questions are going to be asking the applicant to identify how their agency leadership and frontline staff reflect the communities to be served, and how they've effectively used those staff to support the community in the past. The total number of points available for scoring is 130, and applications will be reviewed based on the completeness, based on clear and detailed responses, inclusion of all mandatory program elements, past performance history, and financial standing within the state of Illinois. Funding recommendations then will be based on overall scoring, with secondary consideration given to project implementation statewide. When submitted, these applications go through a rigorous review and selection process, involving reviewing applications based on alignment with program priorities and requirements, considering factors such as organization capacity and program design feasibility, and prioritizing equity, community engagement, and evidence-informed practices. Applications are screened for completeness and eligibility, and awards are made based on evaluation scores and overall scoring. Awards may be less than the requested amount, and successful applicants may have do have the option to request an appeal or debriefing for feedback. When recommendations are made, the R3 board and ICEJA's budget committee will review and approve those designations, and successful grantees will enter into a grant agreement with ICEJA. I'd also like to note that grantees, once selected, must submit performance reports and participate in a statewide evaluation to measure our overall program success and ensure we're on the right direction. For this NOFO, the estimated dates here are below. I would like to note that any questions submitted to us for the NOFO need to be submitted by 2 p.m. on April 25th, and then applications are due in the Amplifund grant management system by 2 p.m. April 30th, 2024. As the director noted, if there are any questions submitted for the NOFO, those questions should be submitted to the email address at cja.r3questions@illinois.gov to ensure transparency. Those questions will be answered via that email and will then be posted on our website, on ICEJA's website, on the R3 website, and within the Amplifund system every week. Thank you very much. I hope everyone interested in applying receives all the important information, and best of luck to you all. Director?
Thank you, Mitch. We hope that was informative as you consider how R3 grants can work for your communities. Next, we will discuss R3 funding eligibility. Allison Gattens, the Acting Research Co-Manager in ICEJA's Center for Violence Prevention and Intervention Research, is here to help you determine whether your community can benefit from R3 grants. Allison?
Great, thank you so much, Director. I'm happy to be here today to talk through how potential applicants might use the eligibility page of the R3 website when applying for the new NOFO, and some of the features and functions that we have available here. But first, to start off with what we mean when we talk about R3 areas. So these are defined in the legislation that created the R3 grant program as areas with the highest rates of gun injury, unemployment, child poverty, and commitments to and returns from the Illinois Department of Corrections, or additionally, areas that are high need, underserved, and disproportionately impacted by historical economic disinvestment. So you can see here we share the details on where those data come from and the thresholds that are employed. If folks in the future want to reference that information, you can find it here on this page. So what do these R3 areas mean for eligibility and the NOFO? So basically, as Mitch mentioned, to be eligible for R3 funding, to put it simply, a program service area must contain at least one of these 906 R3 areas that are shown on the map here. So that's the bottom line for eligibility. As Mitch mentioned, within the NOFO, there are certain aspects, considered local preference, which includes things like if your headquarters is located in an R3 area, or if more than half your staff live in R3 areas. But as far as actual eligibility criteria, the requirement is that a program service area must include at least one of the R3 areas shown here. And another thing I wanted to quickly differentiate is R3 regions and R3 areas. So R3 regions are these 12 different regions that funding is available within. Separating the state into these 12 regions creates various pools of competition and allows ICJA to ensure that programming is funded all throughout the state. And so programs will apply for funding within the region that they will be delivering services in. So if my organization is providing services in Carbondale, then I'll be applying within the southern region, the southern R3 funding region. As you can see here, each region has a funding range, a minimum and maximum amount. You can see that here in the tooltip, as well as the tiers that Mitch mentioned. And so that's another piece of the equity scoring process, that an organization's tier is determined by the length that they've been operating as well as their budget. So for example, if I was a school-based program and I was filling out my application, I would start by up here in the corner, you can enter an address to search. So I'll put in the address of my organization. This is actually where I went to high school. So shout out to Champaign Centennial. And so you can see here, then this will populate with the address that you searched. You can, kind of double check to make sure you entered everything correctly. It will kind of auto populate some suggestions up here. And so then once it's found your address, you can click on it and then get the information about the R3 area that your address is located in. And I will say it is helpful, we note, to sometimes zoom out so you can get a little bit better orientation. When you search like a street address, it does zoom you in very much to that building. So R3 areas are census tracts. So to use this zoom out feature to kind of get a better sense of the whole area, I think is helpful. And so you can see here that the shaded areas are R3 areas, whereas the rest of this gray base map are not R3 areas. This is a little bit of a tricky example because this is kind of the gray colored funding region. So I would say some of these other regions that are more colorful may be a little bit more obvious. But when you click on an R3 area, this information comes up, so you get the information that you need for your application. So this, again, is in the Northeast Central R3 funding region. You can see kind of the minimum and maximum amounts depending on the tier that your organization falls within. You also get information about if it's a high need area that's asked throughout parts of the application. So in this case, this R3 area is not a high need area, but if it was, it would just indicate yes here, that for those areas that are designated high need. I did also want to flag that the R3 area IDs have changed. So if you have applied for a previous R3 NOFO, don't just copy and paste those answers that you put in your first or second application. Make sure you come to this page and check out your address, your service area, to get those new R3 area ID numbers. So you can see here some of the different regions. If you look around, you have Bloomington Normal, that would be in your Northwest Central region here, Decatur in your Central region. So that's kind of what I was mentioning about the different colorings for the regions. If you want to get back to the initial view, kind of your home extent, you can use this home button here that will take you back to the statewide view. So if you get zoomed in too far, you can always use this button to come back. You can also search by not just addresses but other zip codes. So if I was looking for a zip code in the Rockford area, you can search that way. You can also search by county. And these they kind of map you to the center point of the different areas. So if I was a program and my service area is the whole county for Madison County, you can search that way and then kind of see the different R3 areas that fall within your county. And one other feature that I will mention is the table that we have available down here. So this is the same information that is displayed visually in the map, just in a tabular format. And what's nice is this table is searchable. So you can search, if I was that program providing services to Madison County, you can search here by Madison County, and then it will filter the table. And so you can see here, it's filtered it down to the R3 areas that are in Madison County. So there's 15 of those. And then this might be an easier way, for you to kind of gather all of those R3 area IDs that are going to be in your service area that are required for your application. So that's another feature that I just wanted to highlight here. Additionally, the table is available for download. So if you want to work with it offline or do any kind of further analysis, you have that option available as well. So I think that's everything that I was going to cover. So I will turn it back over to the director to close this out.
Thank you very much, Allison. We hope that eases the process of determining R3 grant eligibility. Again, if you have any questions about the information we've provided today, please send them to the email address provided in the comments. All questions are answered on a weekly basis and posted on the R3 website at r3.illinois.gov. Before we leave today, we have one more message for you.
Hi, this is Governor J.B. Pritzker. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program grants and eligibility. I hope you found the information helpful and encouraging as you consider applying for 2025 R3 grant funds. The R3 program is key to ensuring resource equity in communities hurt by economic disinvestment, violence, and the severe and disproportionate damage caused by the war on drugs. Community organizations play a vital role in identifying and addressing local violence prevention needs and issues. It's imperative that your organizations have the tools and resources to build effective and sustainable programs across the state of Illinois. I want to thank Mitch and Allison for their presentations today, and ICEJA Executive Director Del Reese Adams for having the vision to support grassroots organizations as they strive to serve the individual needs of their communities. I value your partnership in this great program, and I'm excited to see what these new grant funds will bring to communities across Illinois.
Thank you, Governor Pritzker. We hope the governor's words encourage you to take a closer look at the R3 program and the possibilities it could create in your communities. We will be accepting R3 grant applications until April 30th. That concludes our webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today.